everyone, this is Peak Entertainment and we are back again, and here now we have another video for you, and we're going to talk about the 8th Mission Impossible movie and the recent trailer that dropped, and whether it will overall be a successful and satisfactory conclusion to the long-running action franchise. Now, there may be spoilers here for all other installments within the Mission Impossible series, so just be aware and going to see this over video, and you can check out my reviews of all of the Mission Impossible movies within the channel, and I'll leave some links within the description. So when we talk of Mission Impossible 8, which from the trailer is now revealed as Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning, which to be honest really isn't the most imaginative of titles. Originally, of course, it was set to be Dead Reckoning Part 2 after the 7th installment Dead Reckoning Part 1, but after that film's disappointing and very much unfortunate box office performance from last year in 2023, the title was set to be changed to try and distance this installment away from that film, but they haven't exactly done that at all with this overall title. Now, the sequel here is set for release provisionally on May the 23rd, 2025, and we very much presume that this will be the epic final installment as originally designed, though recently both star Tom Cruise and director Christopher McQuarrie have certainly dropped little hints that they would look to continue, but of course that depends on how well this performs at the box office. And of course, with Cruise forever in the lead role here, the sequel very much retains the same casting as what we saw from Dead Reckoning Part 1, with the likes of Simon Pegg, Ving Rhames, the absolutely wonderful and beautiful Hayley Atwell, and equally the same for Vanessa Kirby, Esai, and we'll also see the return of Bassett, who appeared last of course in Mission Impossible Fallout. Now, in terms of this installment, the story will pick up after Dead Reckoning Part 1, which saw the IMF and a continuing battle against a mysterious entity, and in the climax of that movie we saw Ethan obtain the key from Gabriel after their encounter on the train, which is overall integral to unlocking the secrets of the entity, which is based within the Russian submarine, the Sevastopol, which what we saw in that extended opening sequence from Dead Reckoning Part 1. And when we come to this trailer overall, it had all of the booming music and wide-spanning shots and vivid energy and explosiveness that you'd expect from a massive blockbuster such as this. It was absolutely full of colour and vibrancy. We of course had multiple sequences of Ethan Hunt running, whether it was through the fields, within alleyways and the streets, and very much customary at this stage that you cannot really have a Mission Impossible film without Ethan Hunt in some sort of prolonged running sequence. But we also had a very contrasted mix of colours here. Very early on, the trailer had this almost very Arctic subterranean feel to it, as of course we will concentrate, as I mentioned before, on the discovery of the submarine and the overall secret of the key and the entity. And all of these scenes that we saw earlier on with the trailer, I will guess we'll probably see in the overall final arc of the actual film. We had some great underwater sequences where we presume it's Hayley Atwell's Grace, seemingly reviving or rescuing Ethan underwater. Lovely sharp HD contrast in terms of the blues and the whites. Absolutely looks great within a trailer, so it will look even more amazing on the big screen within cinema, or indeed if you go and watch this film within IMAX. We also had some colourful aerial sequences where we see the red and yellow planes crossing over within the cliff tops. We have again many scenes of Ethan hanging off planes and clinging onto them. The absolutely almost kamikaze stunt work from Tom Cruise at this stage, very much trying to outdo himself with each following installment. But we also had within this trailer a mix of older scenes throughout the previous franchise. I particularly noticed sequences from both the first film and I think overall the second film as well. This being presumably the last epic conclusion, you're going to get a lot of nods and references to the previous movies. This is standard 101 when it comes to these long-running franchises. When we hit the final movie, we of course have to do some sort of memory lane in terms of what came before, which is absolutely fine as long as the film doesn't bog down too much in becoming a kind of fan service memberberry type of story. But I really don't think that will be the case here, because for the most part the Mission Impossible movies are very much standalone. You really don't need to watch one installment in order to prepare for the next one. I would only say really within the last 2 to 3 installments is where we've had much more of a serialized story. This really began with Rogue Nation, with the villain played by Rhys Evans, and then Fallout was very much more of a sequel or a follow-on from that film. But I really think the standalone nature is what has benefited the Mission Impossible films so much. And to their credit, each film does have its own tone, style and direction, again trying to freshen up the mix with each following release. And from this trailer, everything looks absolutely fabulous, super produced and sophisticated. Great to see all of the cast returning once more, though admittedly some are now looking at age finally, and it's clear that we will get some big emotional moments, maybe a big character death. Now of course we did get one within Dead Reckoning Part 1 with the death of Rebecca Ferguson's Ilsa, but I did predict that when seeing a trailer for Dead Reckoning Part 1, only because we had within that trailer 4 very dominant female characters, whether of course it was Hayley Atwell or Vanessa Kirby, or indeed the female assassin played by Prom Clementine and also Rebecca Ferguson. And I thought there's no way all 4 of these female characters will make it through both installments, as of course we need to cram in the other male characters and as well save plenty of screen time for Tom Cruise himself. So it was a bit predictable and also a bit disrespectful, I would say, seeing the death of Rebecca Ferguson, because it almost came across as if she was being very much replaced by Hayley Atwell. It can't be just mere coincidence that both actresses are brunette and British, so it's a bit all too obvious and slightly again a bit disrespectful to Rebecca Ferguson's character. So again, we'll probably get much more emotional weight than what we certainly got with Dead Reckoning Part 1. And it definitely gives all of those big final conclusion vibes, which I think will help it when it comes closer to its overall release and its chances of success. And when it comes to the final reckoning, we do ask exactly how big it will be and whether it will overall succeed. A lot of the positive feedback and hope seen from this trailer is very similar to what we got with Dead Reckoning Part 1 with its opening trailer, with many people, including myself, touting it at the time to possibly get to the $1 billion mark worldwide. And it was a shame that it underperformed as much as it did. Overall grossing $570 million or so is not a bad take for a normal movie, but of course, following the recent installments and their continuing uptrend in terms of box office success, hopes are very high for Dead Reckoning Part 1. And again, it was unfortunate because overall I thought the movie was very good. Yes, it was probably about 20 to 25 minutes too long, some action sequences were a bit overextended, and I'm still not convinced in the whole concept of the entity and the AI and how Gabriel is much more of this sentient, almost artificial being or super soldier. It didn't really quite gain enough credibility, but again there was still enough there to make Dead Reckoning Part 1 still spectacular and exciting, and again it looked absolutely great on the big screen. And it had everything going for it, but primarily it was undone by a very much of a forced release. At the time of promoting the movie, we were seeing the upcoming writer's strike, so I think this forced Tom Cruise and the producers to try and force the release through as quickly as possible, trying to capitalise on those IMAX screens before they were taken away by Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer. And we saw this very much so with the fact that Dead Reckoning was actually released nationwide on a Tuesday, which is very rare and strange for a blockbuster of this type. And the fact is, by releasing it midweek, by the time it came to the weekend, it lost a lot of that big hype and event feel, because obviously a lot of people had seen it already and were talking about it and spoiling it. So it never quite had the same big impact as what it should have done had it been released over the weekend. It was then, of course, like all of us, blindsided by the dual release of Barbie and Oppenheimer. The Barbenheimer event really took away a lot of the hype and profile away from Dead Reckoning Part 1. Very much a one-off in terms of a social media marketing phenomenon, and this was in stark contrast to what many people saw as just yet another Mission Impossible movie. So this time around, they really need to make sure they get the promotion right for this final installment, especially given the astronomical rumoured budget, estimated to be anything from around 250 to 300 million. I've seen some quotes actually referencing it to be even higher than that, coming close to the budgets of what we saw with both Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. Which is very strange given that the Mission Impossible movies have always been much more of those traditional action movies, very much on a larger scale, but still for the most part practical stunt work rather than CGI. But again, a lot of these costs came from the various delays due to the writer's strike and also the COVID postponements as well. But I do really hope that Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning does really well at the box office. And I do believe that yes, it should be the final installment, that they go out with a bang, because to be honest, where else can you take this franchise? Yes, of course, Tom Cruise continues to defy age with all of his stunt work and energy that he puts into all of these films, but he is getting older, like 63 years old now, and you There will be a stage, as unlikely as it seems at the moment, where he will indeed be too old to carry out these missions in the future. And we do have to be honest, despite this being an adaptation of the 60s spy television series, it is really a franchise that is carried primarily on the star status of Tom Cruise himself. But we never know whether The Final Reckoning goes on to be one of the biggest hits of 2025. It might indeed convince Tom Cruise to extend his further role and adventures as Ethan Hunt within this franchise in the future. We will wait and see overall how indeed Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning performs when it comes out later on in May 2025. So let's move over thoughts and feelings and reflections on the first full trailer for Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and if you have any other further suggestions regarding any other movies, television series, or any other issues within the pop entertainment and culture scene that you'd like to see me cover within the channel, then also let me know within the comments, and I will see if I can provide further commentary for you on that subject matter within the future. Please consider hitting like the subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you very, very soon.